What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Racially Speaking. I'm your host, David Phipps, and I think you're listening to episode 62. Welcome back. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. This is another solo episode with yours truly, so hope you guys have been enjoying these with the occasional drop in on and kind of in a shorter form monologue with myself. Hopefully you're enjoying some of the background music and a little change of pace. I wanted to pop in here and I say wanted to lightly, as I don't really want to talk about what I'm about to talk about, but I know that a lot of you care about this topic, and a little bit of trigger warning. Yes, there was another mass shooting that many of us are probably aware of by now, and it's been a couple weeks at this point. But I wanted to talk about it and talk about some of the kind of piggyback off of some of the previous episodes we've done on gun violence and combating gun violence, and often we've unpacked some of the mass shootings that have taken place over the last couple years. It's a little bit of a trigger warning. I want to be faithful and conscious to look out for anybody that this might be difficult to listen to. But I don't want to do this because I don't want there to be a need to do it. But I know that a lot of our listeners care about being informed about this topic specifically. And I appreciate that. I think it's really important to keep diving into some of these issues, specifically this one. It's also kind of piggybacking off of last episode a little bit. So if you haven't heard already, listen to the previous episode I did with our friend Alethea Lamberson. We kind of talked about the Super Bowl and kind of the hypocrisy behind the NFL. But ultimately, I'm piggybacking off of that episode, a couple other episodes, and then also something I posted recently on social media right before the Super Bowl started. And yes, I did watch, so I'm not shaming anybody for watching. And I said, people who don't want change thrive off of distraction, and the NFL is a master at it. It's been 7 years since Colin Kaepernick played an NFL game, and 11 since he led the 49ers to the Super Bowl. And they'd love for everyone to believe that what he spoke up for has been solved. Which, of course, me and Alethea unpacked why that is just not the case, and it's actually a huge distraction that, they write stuff like end racism in the end zones, or hire Jay-Z, which we unpacked a ton, to head up the Super Bowl halftime show and bring in a lot of often black artists, and how that is maybe good in and of itself. I thought Usher was fantastic. It was a great Super Bowl halftime show, but how that's actually overall, if you understand the bigger picture, is a distraction. Like, it signals that the NFL has done work they really haven't done. Quite the opposite. How Colin Kaepernick was blackballed and doesn't have a job anymore. We talked about race norming, how just until 2 years ago, was 2021, I believe, the NFL was still operating under this thing called race norming, where they had literally written into their documents, their papers, their literature, that black players started off with a lesser cognitive ability than white players, which resulted in they are due less money from the lawsuit that they were filing for concussion protocol or concussion symptom CTE and whatnot back in 2013. So they're still operating under all that, despite all of the perceived progress that the NFL is making. Go back and listen to that episode, because otherwise I'll go on and just repeat everything I've already said. So go back and listen to that. So people who don't want to change thrive off of distraction. And I think if you watch the Super Bowl, and then more specifically found out and watched what happened at the Super Bowl parade, in Kansas City after the Kansas City Chiefs, of course, won, you'd be struck just how the broader picture, how that's a perfect example of distraction. I'm not saying the NFL was, don't mishear me, the NFL wasn't behind anything like this by any means, but just the very sentiment of checking out to watch something like the Super Bowl, which, I got the stats here, was actually the most watched Super Bowl of all time. 123.4 million viewers. That creeps up on the 1969 viewership of the moon landing. So just nuts, huge. Literally most watched Super Bowl of all time. I guess that means maybe the most viewed thing of all time if it's creeping up on the moon landing, which was about 125, 150 million, based on what I saw. But, okay, I'm going to try and land this plane to get into the nitty gritty here. I think what happened at this parade, I'm going to break it down in a minute, signals, not a wake-up call, but it shows that, oh wow, brings us back to reality. Like, all of this stuff, much more serious stuff that is preventable, that we can be doing stuff about, is still happening and will continue to happen even when we're distracted by something like the Super Bowl. This isn't, in no way do I claim to have been, the first person in any way to say that this distraction sentiment. So I wanted to start with a quote from the amazing Toni Morrison. And this is the quote: the very serious function of racism is distraction. I think you can insert something else with there, but that's the quote. So the very serious function of racism is distraction. It keeps you from doing your work. It keeps you explaining over and over again your reason for being. Somebody says you have no language and you spend 20 years proving that you do. Somebody says your head isn't shaped properly, so you have scientists working on the fact that it is. Somebody says you have no art, so you dredge that up. Somebody says you have no kingdoms, so you dredge that up. None of this is necessary. There will always be one more thing. It's Toni Morrison. Okay. The science thing, like I just touched on with the NFL establishing that black players had lesser cognitive ability than white players to begin with, so they weren't due financial payouts like the white players were for post-concussion issues, is right on point with some of the stuff she was touching on. Okay, most watched Super Bowl, been through that. I'm scrolling through my notes. So let's get to this shooting that happened. So if you don't know, there's always a parade, at least in football, basketball, probably MLB. I don't know if the NHL does it. Really common to have a welcoming, celebratory parade in the home city of the winning championship team. Always do that. Really common. It's happened in Kansas City Chiefs, of course, won their third Super Bowl in, I think, 4 years? It's the third of this, dare I say, dynastic football team. So this is the location. And towards the end of this celebration, where, of course, the whole city rallies around, it seems like the Chiefs are literally the thing that brings what I've heard, a very divided area on a lot of different things, but the Chiefs bring everyone together. So everyone loves the Chiefs in Kansas City. So everyone's there, all kinds of people. And towards the end of this, a mass shooting took place yet again. So bare bones, 1 dead, over 20 injured, including about a dozen children. 4 people, I think, were originally arrested, 2 adults, and two kids, juveniles themselves, were arrested for participating in this shooting. Everything I read a ton of different sources to make sure I got all my ducks in a row before doing this. But apparently this resulted from an altercation at the parade between several people, and it escalated to gunfire and others standing by drawing guns. I've said this before on previous episodes. The definition of a mass shooting is varies, but the most widely accepted one lately, I believe in America, is when 4 or more are killed or hit by with gunfire. So, with that definition in mind, this was approximately the 48th in the U.S. this year. 48th. I'm not great at math, but it seems like that's almost like one a day. Probably more. 48th in the U.S. this year. Mass shooting where 4 or more are killed or hit with gunfire. So no one has to die, just gonna be hit by gunfire, 4 or more. So it's not, it's not even counting the three or less, right? 48th in the U.S. this year. And I wanted to camp out here for a second. This wasn't a mass shooting in the sense of there was one shooter that came in, guns a-blazing, and started picking people off like often does happen in these instances. But it was a mass shooting that took place because of an altercation. And what I would argue, and I'm going to make a pretty strong argument if I do say so myself, that could have been avoided, and that happened because I'd argue loose gun laws. So it wasn't just one mass shooter, it was something that escalated because of disagreements. Just two reckless, stupid people. Now, before you say, David, you're being too harsh or you're being too condescending, it's needless for you to call somebody stupid, I'm actually quoting one of the people that was arrested himself. Okay? Stupid man just pulled a gun out and started shooting. Lindell May is one of the guys arrested for allegedly being part of this and shooting his gun off in this altercation. That's his quote about himself. Okay, stupid man just pulled a gun out and started shooting. I should not have done that. Just being stupid. I didn't say that last part. That's the quote about his own self. Okay? Look, and as I said, 2 kids were involved in this. They of course don't have their names. These to me are, the way this took place is important because Missouri is one of the most notorious states for the worst gun laws, the most lax gun laws, and they're actually backtracking and making it, they're repealing the gun laws that they had, which are directly resulting in people dying. Like they're moving backwards. They're notorious for being lax with gun laws, and this case in point is the result. Case in point, this is the result. I think this sheds light on the sentiments of good guys. The only way to stop a bad guy with the gun is a good guy with the gun. Well, actually, there were over 800 police at this thing, and that's not a knock on the police. It's a knock on that sentiment. That's not going to cut it. It's just not. No one can react in that short of a time span. There was 800 police there. Those are the good guys. Why couldn't they stop it? Because they can't. They can't. There's 800 police there on site. That's what they're there for. They couldn't stop it. So I think it's important how this started. Literally started with an altercation, and then people that have guns that they're allowed to have by law resulted in innocent women being killed, and then children being not killed but being injured, and 20 people overall being injured. This would obviously be even more a bigger deal if more people were killed, but thank God that they weren't. I think this sheds light on, well, that was just one bad guy with a gun, like we often like to say when there are these purposeful mass shootings. But let me read a couple things. This is off. You can read a lot of the stuff off of everytown.com. Fantastic resource for everything gun laws. This is straight off their website. Missouri experiences one of the highest rates of gun deaths, gun homicide rates, and household firearm ownership. Missouri not only has none of the foundational gun violence prevention laws, but in 2007, the state repealed an 80-year-old permit to purchase law, leading to an increase in the state's gun homicide rate of up to 27%. 27%. Only few of the 50 top policies are in place in Missouri, and legislators have shown no momentum for passing gun safety protections, despite the fact that St. Louis is among the top U.S. cities in the highest gun murder rates in the country. If Missouri had the gun death rate of our national leaders, the 8 states with the strongest gun safety laws, we could save 14,959 lives in the next decade. That's from everytown.com. And then from the Johns Hopkins Center for Gun Policy and Research, Missouri began allowing gun owners to carry concealed weapons in 2003, requiring training and a permit issued by the county sheriff. That's 2003. In 2007, the law requiring a permit to buy a handgun was repealed. The repeal permit to purchase led to at least a 25% and as much as a 47% increase in firearms homicides and a 23.5% increase in firearm suicides in Missouri in the years since it passed. That's according to the Johns Hopkins Center for Gun Policy and Research. I think most of you guys know this by now, but also in relation to underdeveloped countries. So, there's plenty of underdeveloped countries that have, if you look up stats, which people like to use to say that, America's not that bad with this. In comparison to developed countries like the U.S., it's night and day, us leading with mass shootings. I think upwards of 70-80% of mass shootings in developed countries, happen in the U.S. So I know sometimes we like to say, "Oh, well, this happens other places too." Not like it does here. Okay. I have a personal aside. I believe it was last year where there was a young girl that pulled up. I'm gonna get my stories mixed up. There was a young girl that was shot, I think, in her driveway. I'm gonna get my stories mixed up. A couple young people were shot, and I believe one was shot by somebody after they knocked on the wrong door to a house, and I think that was legal. It got deemed legal. I don't want to say the wrong thing. I believe that is the case. That's what happened. I believe the person was named. Let's see. I believe it was. Sorry about this, you guys. Let's see. I know I posted about, so I'm scrolling back through my social media here. No, I can't find the names. Anyway, I remember. The only reason I remember this is because 2 young people, I believe, were shot and killed innocently. For going to like someone's wrong door or something like that. And I, shortly right around that time, ended up doing that. Like most people have. They've gone to the wrong door, but I literally, I was going to pick something up from a friend's house. And it was kind of late at night. My wife had, given me directions to someone's house to pick something up for her from one of their friends. So I'd never been to their house before, so I was just going, following the directions. Went, knocked on the door. And this is, after dark, not super late, but 9 o'clock, I think, around. And I thought they're expecting me, and someone else answered the door. Here's the thing. They were noticeably startled because, like, who is knocking on our door? It was a woman and her kids. But luckily, by coincidence, I knew them and they knew me. They thought it was strange because, yes, it was strange. I was like, why are you here? but I knew them, so thank God for that. And they knew. They're like, "What are you looking for?" I told them, like, "Oh yeah, different house, like across the street." I say all that because it was just this. It was almost the exact same circumstance and happenstance of that got these two people killed. Just another personal example of this is what this guns over people culture is glorifying. It's not this. The answer isn't just guns are bad. It's the culture that is supported by putting gun rights above people and safety. Just a couple more things. I think you always need to follow the money with a lot of this stuff and the leaders, the money and leaders. Okay. Like I said, Missouri, and I've read a bunch of stuff. Missouri has for a long time been one of the worst with gun safety, and people are responsible for that. Leaders are responsible for that. Here's a racial element with the specific one happening at the parade. Mike Parsons is a governor of Missouri. Used the term racial thugs to describe the shooters as just kind of outliers, and that's the whole reason why this shooting at the parade happened. No, if you've done much justice work, especially around racism, you understand that using that term racial thugs has racist connotations, and it's also super just two-faced, and it is again doing this individualizing thing when there are clear things that have caused it systemically, and laws that him and these senators have power over and control over. Like I said, they're repealing things. They're making things less safe in their state that are literally leading to people dying. Mike Parsons has been a lifelong NRA member, and the leaders and senators in Missouri have contributed, or the NRA has contributed millions of dollars to Missouri senators. Senator Roy Blunt is the fourth largest NRA benefactor in Congress, with more than $4.5 million in help since 1996. Senator Josh Hawley is the 12th, approaching $1.4 million in contributions in just 4 years. So literally, these people are in bed with the people backing their political careers. So hands are tied. And I've never said anything about this on here, but Wayne LaPierre, is the term CEO, president, longtime president of the NRA, just yesterday, at the time of recording this, so this is the February 25th, I think just the 24th yesterday, I believe. I was just gonna say, as I planned to do this, that he was under investigation or on trial, but it's actually, I think, he might still be on trial, but at least part of it, he was found liable. Wayne LaPierre ruled liable for corruption. So, and he found liable for specifically using funds as personal benefit. NRA funds for personal benefit. He resigned when he was about to go on trial. It's a huge mess. It's disgraceful. It's honestly despicable. Look, guys, I say all this because I don't want to skirt around and move around some of these important justice issues that we're talking about, and I say often on here that these justice conversations are life and death. That I really mean that, and this is of course one of the most poignant examples of that. Like these are life and death matters. These aren't, I just can't stand right now, with everything being so polarized, that people are just attributing so many life and death things to just haha politics, or haha let's like, oh, things are getting bad, like let's laugh it off and just all get along. Like, no, things are getting bad for who? You know, like there are answers. Is everything ever going to be perfect? No, but when laws that save lives are being repealed and then more lives are being lost, someone or someones are responsible, and that's not the time to check out and be paralyzed and crippled by polarization. That's the time to dig in, I think. And that is truly not an endorsement for the left or right or anything. It's just an endorsement for let's be intelligent with these things. Let's see what's before us. Like, a lot of this stuff is not hard to see. If you're willing to pay attention to the patterns here. Is there some nuance in some of these conversations? Sure. There is some nuance. But when can we leave some of those nuanced conversations for later, when we see where there's not nuance, where there's literal black and white, right or wrong? When can we save the nuance for later so that we can do the right thing first? Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you guys. Tired of hearing about these things that keep happening. And another thing I'll say is look, the U.S. by far leads with all these statistics. By far. Okay, by far. And it's not something that's brand new. I'll add also, it's not something that's brand new. And I say that because I know that people who oppose love to say, well, it's just because of social media and the algorithm that, you know, too much scrolling, like we're all just addicted to the news and things are going to be put out like a hamster wheel to get us to react. I get it. Part of that is true, but there's a much more serious part where we're just becoming more aware of things that are happening or that have been happening, whether we're aware of them or not. This is one of them, guys. This is one of them. Please, if you put any kind of stock and respect in anything I'm saying on here, like this is one of them. And there are ways to prevent things. I know many of you listening, like most of you, don't live in Missouri. That's not the point. The point is, this is not just Missouri. This is happening widespread, and it's preventable. All right, that's all I got for now on this. I think we might follow it up if more details come out about what happened. But look, hearts, thoughts and prayers. It's hard to even say that now because it can be triggering for people, I know. Thoughts and prayers do go out to all the people recovering from what happened at the parade, the families, the kids, the adults whose lives are forever changed. I know one person died, but everyone who was there at that parade, their lives were changed for forever. Lives are changed for forever. I even heard one testimony from somebody that was an adult was sharing and saying, yeah, the 14-year-olds and 13-year-olds that were around us actually had to take charge while we were running for cover because they're trained. They know what to do. It's like our kids are being trained for this, like a fire drill. And to me, that's one of the most depressing realities that we're living in. Like the kids are having to lead because they're just trained like it could happen at any point, anywhere. And I think we're seeing that that's the case. It can and has continued to. So look, I'm gonna keep pushing this, talking about these things. Sad times. I don't want to always be down in the dumps on here, but I can't be distracted by away from this stuff. Anyway, thank you guys for listening. Excited to be back with some more conversations here very soon. Yeah, thank you guys for listening. Please remember to subscribe, share, rate, review, follow us. It really does make a difference with the algorithm. Helps people find us, helps our ratings go up, and it does make a huge difference. Please also consider joining our Patreon if you want to support the show. You can go to ratiospeaking.com/patreon.com. I believe I always forget the URL, but you can find it. Please consider joining and following us. We're also on YouTube. Please follow us on YouTube as well. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye.